Just a reminder before today's programme that if you haven't seen the previous episode, you can check it out here on AMTV. And in that previous episode, we took a look at the ident known as crime and punishment. And now, here on AMTV, time for something a bit more light-hearted, but we're going even further back, all the way to the 60s. Hello, and welcome to the Ident Review Extra, the spin-off show that takes a look at one individual ident each episode and gives it the review it deserves. And today we continue our marathon through the BBC2 idents of the 1990s. Today on our BBC2 journey, we go back to the summer of 1993, where the channel decided to take its programming even further back to the 1960s. Hours of film and TV shows from the era were shown on BBC2, including milestone shows like the pilot of Steptoe and Son, Peyton Place, Man Alive, Department S, and Adam Adamant Lives, just to name a few. So naturally by this point, BBC2 had been experimenting with special idents for certain themes with great success most of the time, so it only made sense that as they took audiences back to the 1960s, that they created a new ident to promote that theme to the max. So here I present to you, One Day in the 60s.
And now on BBC2, Frost in the Air.
Well, there's certainly a lot going on there, isn't there? I feel there's a lot to love, but also a lot to critique with the special ident here. Let's start with the good. I love that it absolutely embraces all of the 60s iconography. I mean, just pause the clip at any point and you'll be able to spot or point out some key image that in some way summarise part of the decade. I wonder if you'll be able to spot everything. I also like the fact that these classic bits of ephemera interchange with the familiar blue too that we're so used to, giving us that warming sense of familiarity with the brand, and reminding us that even though we've been transported back to the 60s, we are still indeed watching what is firmly the BBC2 of the 1990s.
Let's go back to 1966 for the first episode of that legendary drama series, Adam Adamant Lives.
Now let's talk about what I don't like as much. Even though it's lovely to see all these different images from the swinging 60s, sometimes you do feel a bit lost in everything. I often like being able to see what's going on when the sequence itself is transmitting. I know I just said that you can pause it to see everything, but back in 1993, unless you were taping it on VHS, you wouldn't have been able to do that. Basically, the fundamental problem is that it's too cluttered. Had they cut down the amount of images shown at once or just allowed more time for everything to be shown clearly, then this could have really ascended to be even better than what it already was.
You're watching One Day in the 60s. Stay with BBC2 and you'll see the television programmes that made the 60s swing.
Unsurprisingly enough, after the One Day in the 60s block ended, this ident would not be seen again on BBC2 for viewers to take in and enjoy, which, like some of its peers, is a little strange. BBC2, or the BBC in general, has been no stranger over the past 30 years in showing programmes of all kinds that are either about or were made in the 1960s, so they would have had the opportunity to pull this back into use. It's not one of the most well-remembered idents from the 90s, but you can't deny it still has a little bit of charm that only the 60s could have produced. And so we've come to the end, but before we go, the final words from our broadcaster. That was the Ident Review Extra. We hope you enjoyed, and that you tune in next time. Keep an eye on the Community tab and the Sunday Catch-Up for further news about this programme, as well as others here on AMTV. But, until next time, have a good week, and we hope that you'll join us again soon. Good night.